The confrontation Dominic Mercer surveyed the packed auditorium with practiced confidence. The annual Future Tech Summit in San Francisco had drawn the expected crowd of industry insiders, tech journalists, and ambitious startups hoping to catch the attention of investors. As CEO of Quantum Dynamics, the company that had revolutionized artificial intelligence interfaces over the past decade, Dominic was accustomed to being the center of attention. Innovation without ethical constraints is how we've made our greatest leaps, he declared, his voice carrying effortlessly through the state-of-the-art sound system. When Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, he wasn't worrying about privacy concerns. When the Wright brothers built their airplane, they weren't filing environmental impact reports. A polite ripple of laughter spread through the audience. Dominic smiled, knowing he had them in the palm of his hand. At 42, he had perfected the art of the keynote speech, the right blend of inspiration, provocation, and self-assurance that reinforced his reputation as a visionary. The point is, he continued, pacing across the stage in his tailored charcoal suit, we can't let hypothetical concerns about AI ethics slow down progress. My company has achieved unprecedented success precisely because we move fast and fix problems later. Quantum Dynamics didn't become a market leader by waiting for regulatory frameworks to catch up. In the third row, Sophia Reyes felt her pulse quicken. The 34-year-old software engineer and founder of Ethicode, a small but respected AI ethics consultancy, had been taking notes throughout Dominic's speech. Her company might be tiny compared to Quantum Dynamics, but she had spent years researching the unintended consequences of unchecked AI development. Dominic was now taking questions, nodding appreciatively at the softball inquiries that came his way. When the moderator pointed to Sophia, she rose from her seat, microphone in hand. Mr. Mercer, I'm Sophia Reyes from Ethicode, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You mentioned fixing problems later, but some AI harms can't be undone once they're deployed. Your company's facial recognition system was recently found to have significant bias issues that affected housing opportunities for minorities. Isn't move fast and fix later just a convenient way to avoid responsibility for foreseeable harms? The auditorium fell silent. Dominic's smile remained fixed, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He wasn't used to being challenged so directly, especially not at events where he was the headline speaker. Ms. Reyes, is it? He replied, his tone deliberately patronizing. While I appreciate your concern, theoretical debates about ethics don't build products that change the world. If we waited for perfect systems, we'd still be using flip phones. Sophia didn't back down. There's nothing theoretical about documented bias in systems that affect real people's lives. And it's not about perfect systems, it's about responsible testing before deployment. Your analogy about Bell and the Wright brothers doesn't hold in an era where technology can scale to affect millions overnight. The moderator looked uncomfortable, clearly wanting to move on, but Sophia continued. Innovation and ethics aren't mutually exclusive, Mr. Mercer. In fact, the most sustainable innovations consider their impact from the beginning. My company may be small, but we've helped dozens of startups develop robust AI systems without the costly recalls and reputation damage that comes from rushing to market with flawed products. Dominic's jaw tightened. This wasn't the deferential treatment he was accustomed to. But something about Sophia's confidence and precision intrigued him. She wasn't ranting or grandstanding. Her critique was specific, informed, and delivered, with conviction rather than hostility. An interesting perspective, he finally said, regaining his composure. Though perhaps one that luxury of hindsight affords. I'd be curious to see how Ethicode would handle the pressures of scale that companies like mine face daily. The moderator quickly called on someone else, relieved to move past the tense exchange. But throughout the remainder of the session, Dominic found his attention repeatedly drawn to the woman in the third row. Most people in this industry either worshipped him or envied him. Few challenged him on substance rather than style. As the session ended and attendees filed out for the networking reception, Dominic made an impulsive decision. Instead of heading to the VIP lounge as planned, he instructed his assistant to find Sophia Reyes and invite her for a private conversation. He told himself it was to diffuse any potential negative press from their exchange. But deep down, he knew it was something more. For the first time in years, someone had made him question his certainties, and he found himself genuinely curious about what else she had to say. Unexpected respect. The networking reception buzzed with activity as Sophia made her way through clusters of conference attendees. Several people stopped her to offer quiet congratulations for standing up to Dominic Mercer, though most quickly looked over their shoulders afterward, as if worried they might be overheard by someone from quantum dynamics. Sophia was checking her phone when a woman in a sleek pantsuit approached her. "Ms. Reyes, I'm Tara Williams, Mr. Mercer's executive assistant. He's requested a few minutes of your time if you're available." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Is this about damage control?" Tara's professional smile didn't waver. "Mr. Mercer didn't share his reasons. He's waiting in the Redwood conference room if you're interested." Curiosity won out over caution. Sophia followed Tara through a side door and down a corridor to a small meeting room. Dominic Mercer stood by the window, silhouetted against the San Francisco skyline, his phone in hand. He looked up when she entered, and Tara quietly closed the door behind her. "Ms. Reyes, thank you for coming." His tone was neutral, impossible to read. "I was surprised to get your invitation," Sophia replied, remaining near the door. "If you're concerned about bad press from our exchange, I'm not interested in making this personal." Dominic slipped his phone into his pocket and gestured to the chairs. "Actually, I wanted to continue our conversation. You made some points that deserve more than a defensive response in front of an audience." Sophia hesitated before taking a seat, maintaining her guard. Dominic sat across from her, studying her face with undisguised curiosity. "Your critique was specific. Our facial recognition system and its bias issues. Most critics throw vague accusations about AI dangers. You clearly know our products." "I've studied quantum systems extensively," Sophia acknowledged. "My doctoral research focused on algorithmic bias in commercial AI. Your Genesis platform was one of my case studies." Recognition flickered in Dominic's eyes. "You're Dr. Reyes, from Stanford. Your paper was circulated in our R&D department last year." "Yes, though I'm surprised anyone at Quantum read it, given your company's approach. We read everything written about our technology, even the critical perspectives." He leaned forward. "Especially the well-researched ones. Your analysis was thorough, though I disagreed with some conclusions." "Which part specifically?" Sophia challenged. What began as a tense exchange gradually evolved into a vigorous intellectual debate. Dominic defended his company's aggressive innovation strategy, while acknowledging certain oversights in their testing protocols. Sophia articulated her vision of integrated ethics in AI development without compromising advancement. Their conversation flowed from technical specifications to philosophical questions about technology's role in society. An hour passed unnoticed. Dominic found himself impressed not just by Sophia's technical knowledge, but by her practical understanding of market realities. Unlike many academics, she wasn't proposing utopian solutions divorced from business imperatives. "Your perspective on incremental testing is actually similar to what our new CTO has been advocating," Dominic admitted. "The problem is balancing that caution against market pressures and competitor timelines. That's where ethics becomes a competitive advantage, not an obstacle," Sophia countered. "When Facebook rushed to market without adequate safeguards, they eventually faced billions in fines and years of regulatory scrutiny. Taking slightly longer to deploy responsibly isn't just ethical, it's financially prudent." Dominic studied her thoughtfully. "You don't speak like a typical academic." "Because I'm not just an academic. Ethicode works with real companies facing real market challenges. We're small by choice, not by limitation." For the first time, Dominic smiled genuinely. "You know, when you challenged me today, my first thought was that you were another critic who doesn't understand the realities of running a global tech company." "And now?" Sophia asked. "Now I think you understand those realities better than some of my executives." He hesitated before adding, "We're launching a new AI assistant next quarter that's designed to help with medical diagnostics. Given your expertise, I'd value your perspective on our testing protocols. Sophia couldn't hide her surprise. You want my input? After I publicly criticized your company? Precisely because you publicly criticized my company, Dominic replied. Quantum dynamics doesn't lack for yes men, Ms. Reyes. What we occasionally lack is someone willing to point out our blind spots before they become public relations disasters. His phone buzzed, and he checked it with a frown. I have another commitment, but I'm serious about getting your input on this project. He pulled out a business card and wrote his personal number on the back. My direct line. If you're interested, call me next week and we can arrange something. As Sophia took the card, their fingers briefly touched. She was struck by the genuine interest in his eyes, not the calculated charm he displayed on stage, but something more authentic. For his part, Dominic found himself noticing details he'd missed during their debate. The intelligence in her dark eyes, the way she gestured expressively when making important points, the quiet confidence that needed no posturing. I'll consider it, Sophia said carefully. Though I should warn you, I won't soften my assessments just because they're delivered in private. Dominic laughed, a rich sound without pretense. I would expect nothing less, Dr. Reyes. That's precisely why your perspective would be valuable. As they parted ways, Dominic found himself looking forward to her call with an eagerness that surprised him. Their debate had been the most intellectually stimulating conversation he'd had in months. In an industry where people either feared or flattered him, Sophia's willingness to engage him as an equal rather than an icon was refreshing. What had begun as damage control had evolved into something unexpected: respect. And as Dominic returned to his scheduled meetings, he found himself mentally revisiting their arguments, testing his long-held assumptions against her perspective. For the first time in years, someone had made him question not just his positions, but the thinking behind them. The sensation was uncomfortable and strangely invigorating. Professional partnership. 3 weeks after the Future Tech Summit, Sophia found herself in the gleaming headquarters of Quantum Dynamics. The receptionist led her through the open concept office space, where engineers and designers worked amid cutting-edge technology. She'd finally called Dominic after considerable deliberation, expecting the invitation to consult might have been a momentary impulse he'd regret. Instead, he'd answered immediately and arranged for her to review their medical AI project codenamed Asclepius. Sophia was shown into a sleek conference room where Dominic stood conversing with a small group. He broke away when he saw her. Dr. Reyes, welcome to Quantum. His handshake was firm, his manner more formal than during their private conversation. Let me introduce the Asclepius team. The introductions revealed a world-class team: Dr. Rajiv Patel, the medical director; Gabrielle Navarro, lead AI architect; James Wilson, data ethics specialist; and several others. Sophia noted with interest that Dominic had already added an ethics position, unusual for a company with his stated philosophy. James joined us last month, Dominic explained, catching her glance. Your critique at the summit prompted some organizational reflection. The meeting began with presentations on Asclepius, an AI designed to assist medical professionals with diagnostic suggestions based on patient data. The technology was impressive, but Sophia immediately identified concerning gaps in the testing methodology. Your training data is heavily skewed toward male patients, she observed, scrolling through the documentation. And there's minimal representation of certain ethnic groups with unique medical presentations. Dr. Patel nodded. That's been a challenge. Historical medical data inherits the biases of medical research, which has traditionally focused on white, male subjects. Which is precisely why we need specialized testing protocols, Sophia countered. If deployed as is, Asclepius could miss crucial diagnostic indicators in women and minorities. What followed was a rigorous 4-hour technical discussion. Sophia proposed specific testing methodologies and validation frameworks. To her surprise, Dominic actively participated rather than delegating, demonstrating a depth of technical knowledge that contradicted his public image as merely a business visionary. Implementation would delay launch by approximately 3 months, Gabrielle concluded after running simulations on Sophia's suggestions. Everyone looked at Dominic, expecting resistance, Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. 3 months against potential diagnostic failures and the resulting lawsuits? That's an easy calculation. Implement Dr. Reyes's protocols. As the meeting concluded, Dominic asked Sophia to stay behind. When they were alone, his professional demeanor softened slightly. Your insights were invaluable today, he said. I'd like to bring you on as a consultant throughout Asclepius's development cycle. Your firm would be compensated appropriately. Of course. Sophia studied him, trying to discern his motivation. This seems at odds with your public stance on ethical constraints. Dominic walked to the window overlooking San Francisco Bay. Perhaps my public stance has been evolving, or perhaps I've always understood the value of ethical considerations but framed them poorly. Which is it? He turned, his expression candid. Both, I think. The summit exchange made me realize how defensive I've become about certain positions. Your paper highlighted vulnerabilities in our systems that our internal teams missed. That's not ideological, it's practical. And the ethics position you've added? James? That was actually in progress before the summit, though I accelerated it afterward. Dominic smiled ruefully. Contrary to my public image, I don't actually enjoy product recalls or congressional hearings about bias in our systems. Over the following weeks, Sophia's consultancy with quantum dynamics intensified. What began as weekly meetings evolved into daily collaboration sessions. Ethicode temporarily relocated to office space near Quantum's headquarters to facilitate the partnership. The collaboration wasn't without friction. Dominic and Sophia clashed repeatedly over implementation details, testing timelines, and acceptable risk thresholds. Their debates became legendary among the Asclepius team, passionate intellectual sparring matches where neither would concede without compelling evidence. You're being overly cautious, Dominic argued during a particularly heated exchange about privacy protocols. These additional encryption layers will impact system performance. And you're underestimating the sensitivity of medical data, Sophia countered. One breach could destroy patient trust permanently. Yet these conflicts proved productive. Each challenge forced both to articulate and defend their positions with increasing precision. The resulting solutions were invariably stronger than either's original proposal. Gradually, the Asclepius project transformed. What had begun as an ambitious but potentially problematic AI evolved into a groundbreaking system that balanced innovation with responsibility. Sophia found herself impressed by Dominic's willingness to adapt his vision based on evidence, while Dominic came to respect her pragmatic approach to ethics. 2 months into their collaboration, they were working late, reviewing test results in Dominic's office. Takeout containers from a nearby Thai restaurant were scattered among data printouts. These results from the diverse patient cohort are promising, Sophia said, highlighting patterns in the data. The detection rate for heart disease symptoms in women has improved by 28%. Dominic nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. That's significant, especially considering the historical underdiagnosis in female patients. He leaned back, studying her. You know, when we started this, I expected you to be more idealistic, less willing to compromise, and I expected you to be more resistant to change, Sophia admitted, less willing to delay launch for ethical considerations. I'm not immune to evidence, Dominic said. When someone makes a compelling case, I listen, even when that someone publicly challenged you at your own keynote. Dominic smiled. Especially then. It takes conviction to speak truth to power. That's rare in this industry. Something shifted in the atmosphere between them, a momentary acknowledgement of mutual respect that had grown into something warmer. Sophia found herself noticing the way fatigue softened Dominic's features, making him seem more approachable than his public persona. The moment was interrupted by Gabrielle rushing in with new test data that required immediate attention. As they refocused on the work, Sophia realized how comfortably they had fallen into a collaborative rhythm. What had begun as an unlikely professional partnership was evolving into something neither had anticipated. A connection based on shared intellectual passion and grudging admiration. As the night deepened and they continued working side by side, The boundary between professional colleagues and something more personal began to blur, though neither was quite ready to acknowledge the shift. Personal revelations. The Quantum Dynamics corporate retreat at Lake Tahoe was an annual tradition, bringing together key teams for 3 days of strategic planning and team building. This year, as a critical partner on the Asclepius project, Sophia and 2 senior members of Ethicode were invited to attend. The mountain resort offered stunning views of the lake surrounded by pine forests. After a morning of presentations, the afternoon was designated for creative collaboration activities. Sophia found herself paired with Dominic for a hiking excursion designed to foster conversations away from the confines of conference rooms. They followed a trail that wound through fragrant pine trees, climbing steadily toward a ridge overlooking the lake. The physical exertion and natural setting created a different dynamic between them, more relaxed than their usual professional interactions. "You're surprisingly fit for someone who spends most days in boardrooms," Sophia observed as Dominic easily navigated a steep section of the trail. He laughed. "Rock climbing is my therapy. When you're hanging off a cliff face, quarterly projections suddenly seem less life or death. That's not what I would have guessed as your stress relief." "Let me guess, you imagined yacht parties with celebrities and politicians?" His tone was light, but Sophia detected a hint of weariness. "Something like that," she admitted. "Your public image suggests a lifestyle of exclusive galas and luxury retreats." Dominic stopped at a viewpoint, gazing across the crystalline blue of Lake Tahoe. "That version of me exists for investors and the media. It's useful, but it's not complete." They continued hiking in companionable silence until reaching a secluded outlook. Sitting on a fallen log, Dominic surprised Sophia by pulling a well-worn paperback from his backpack, a collection of Mary Oliver poems. "Another piece that doesn't fit the public image," he said, noticing her expression. "I discovered her poetry during a difficult period after my father died. Her perspectives on nature and mortality were anchoring. The revelation created an opening for more personal conversation." Sophia shared how she'd been drawn to ethics in technology after witnessing her grandmother struggle with early algorithms that denied her medical coverage due to misclassification. "That's what fuels my work, not abstract principles but real people affected by the systems we build," she explained. "It's personal for you," Dominic said thoughtfully. "I sometimes forget that technology isn't just about innovation metrics and market share. And what about you? What drives Dominic Mercer beyond building the next breakthrough product?" He was quiet for a moment. "Legacy, maybe. Not the kind that gets your name on buildings, but creating tools that fundamentally improve lives." He looked at her directly. "My mother was a rural physician. She worked miracles with limited resources but lost patients she might have saved, with better diagnostic tools. Asclepius began as a tribute to her work. You've never mentioned that in any interviews. Some motivations are too personal for press releases." He smiled ruefully. "Besides, tech CEO motivated by maternal admiration doesn't sell magazines like Ruthless Innovation Titan." The conversation deepened as they continued their hike. Sophia shared her struggles building Ethicode in an industry that often treated ethics as an afterthought. Dominic revealed the intense pressure of leading a public company where one misstep could affect thousands of employees. The confident CEO who dismisses concerns and promises unstoppable growth. That's partly performance, he admitted. Investors, employees, the board, they all need that certainty, even when certainty is impossible. "That sounds exhausting," Sophia said quietly. "It can be, which is why this," he gestured to the mountains around them, "and people who see beyond the performance become essential." As the afternoon light softened, they reached the summit. The view was breathtaking. The vast blue lake surrounded by mountains, the sky deepening toward sunset. They sat on a rocky outcrop, conversation flowing more easily than ever before. "Can I ask you something personal?" Dominic said after a comfortable silence. Sophia nodded. "That day at the summit when you challenged me, were you afraid?" She considered the question honestly. "Yes, My hands were shaking. But I've learned that important truths often require courage to voice. I admire that, he said simply. In my position, people rarely tell me difficult truths. They tell me what they think I want to hear. Is that why you reached out after the summit? To find someone who would be honest? Partly, he acknowledged. But it was more than that. Your clarity of thinking, your conviction, I found it compelling. You weren't just criticizing, you were offering a better vision. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken recognition. Dominic's gaze lingered on her face, and Sophia felt a flutter of awareness that had nothing to do with their professional relationship. The moment was interrupted by distant thunder. Dark clouds were gathering rapidly over the mountains. We should head back, Dominic said reluctantly. Mountain storms can develop quickly. They began their descent, but the storm moved, faster than anticipated. Rain began to fall heavily, and they took shelter under a rocky overhang. Standing close together as lightning illuminated the landscape, Sophia became acutely aware of Dominic as a man rather than a business partner or public figure. You're shivering, he noted, removing his jacket and placing it around her shoulders. The gesture was protective rather than presumptuous. Thank you, she said, pulling it closer. It carried his scent, sandalwood and something distinctly his own. Their eyes met, and the professional boundaries that had defined their relationship seemed suddenly permeable. Dominic reached out slowly, brushing a raindrop from her cheek with gentle fingers. Sophia, he said softly, her name sounding different in his voice. These past months working with you have changed how I see everything. Before she could respond, voices called from down the trail, the retreat coordinator and several staff members searching for them with umbrellas and raincoats. The moment dissolved, but something had fundamentally shifted between them as they rejoined the group and returned to the resort. Both recognized that their relationship had evolved beyond professional respect or even friendship. Neither was prepared to define this new territory, but both understood that the carefully maintained distance between them had diminished. That evening, at the retreat dinner, they maintained their professional demeanor, but exchanged glances across the room that carried the weight of their shared afternoon. Not just the near moment in the rain, but the deeper revelations that had preceded it. The walls that separated CEO from consultant, public persona from private person, had begun to crumble, revealing the complex individuals behind the professional roles. New beginnings 3 months after the retreat, the Asclepius project was nearing its public launch. The quantum dynamics headquarters buzzed with anticipation as final validation tests showed results exceeding even the most optimistic projections. The AI had demonstrated remarkable accuracy in diagnostic assistance across diverse patient demographics, with safeguards that protected privacy while maintaining performance. Sophia stood in the testing lab, reviewing the final reports with a sense of pride. What had begun as a consultancy had evolved into a full partnership, with Ethicode's methodologies now integrated throughout Quantum's development process. The journey had transformed not just the project but the company's approach to ethical AI development. Impressive results, Dominic said, joining her at the monitoring station. The diverse patient trials exceeded expectations. The additional testing protocols were worth the delay, Sophia agreed. Early detection rates for conditions that present differently in women and minorities show significant improvement over existing systems. Their professional interaction remained focused, but underlying currents from Lake Tahoe remained unaddressed. Since that rain-soaked afternoon, they had maintained a careful distance in professional settings, though their collaboration had only deepened in effectiveness. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning, Dominic said. I'd like you to present alongside me. Sophia looked up in surprise. That's unusual. Quantum typically presents new technologies with just executive leadership. This isn't a typical project. Your contributions were fundamental to its success. Besides, he added with a hint of a smile, having the prominent critic who once publicly challenged me now standing beside me makes for a compelling narrative. Later that evening, after most employees had departed, Dominic invited Sophia to his office to review their presentation. The San Francisco skyline glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows as night settled over the bay. I've been thinking about what comes next, Dominic said after they'd finalized their talking points. For Quantum, for Ethicode, for us. Sophia set down her tablet, acknowledging the shift to personal territory. And what conclusions have you reached? Professionally speaking, I want to establish a permanent ethics division within Quantum, with direct reporting lines to executive leadership. I'd like Ethicode to help build it. He paused. But there are personal considerations too. Such as the fact that I find myself thinking about you in ways that extend beyond professional admiration. His directness was characteristic. Once Dominic Mercer made a decision, he didn't hedge. Sophia had anticipated this conversation since Lake Tahoe, had rehearsed rational responses about professional boundaries and conflicts of interest. Yet, faced with his honesty, those prepared arguments felt insufficient. I've thought about you too, she admitted quietly. More than is entirely professional. Dominic moved to the window, creating space for both to consider the implications. When you challenged me at that summit, you changed the trajectory of quantum dynamics. But more significantly, you changed me. You made me question assumptions I'd held for years. You've influenced me as well, Sophia acknowledged. I came to our first meeting expecting to find a corporate tyrant unwilling to consider ethical implications. Instead, I found someone capable of evolution when presented with compelling evidence. Is that all you found? He asked, turning to face her. No. Her voice was soft but certain. I found someone who conceals depth behind public performance, someone who reads poetry and climbs mountains and cares deeply about creating technology that matters, someone I've grown to care about beyond our professional connection. The admission hung in the air between them. Dominic crossed the room slowly, stopping before her. There are complications, he said. Professional entanglements, public scrutiny. There, always are, Sophia replied. Nothing worthwhile comes without complexity. He reached for her hand, a gesture both tentative and deliberate. I've built my career on calculated risks. But this feels different, more consequential than any business decision. Because it is, Sophia said, her fingers interlacing with, this isn't about market share or technological advancement. It's about two people who found unexpected connection. The distance between them diminished until there was none. Their first kiss was gentle, a question and answer exchanged without words. When they parted, both recognized a threshold crossed. The press conference announcing Asclepius the following morning was unlike any previous quantum dynamics product launch. Instead of Dominic alone commanding the stage, he and Sophia presented as equal partners. They detailed not just the technology's capabilities but the rigorous ethical framework that guided its development. This represents a new direction for quantum dynamics, Dominic told the assembled journalists. One where innovation and responsibility advance together. Dr. Reyes and her team at Ethicode have been instrumental in helping us pioneer this approach. The questions from the press inevitably turned to their unusual partnership, the CEO and his former critic now standing united. Does this partnership extend beyond the Asclepius project? One reporter asked. Dominic looked at Sophia, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded slightly, permission to acknowledge what was beginning between them. Our professional collaboration has been transformative for both organizations, Dominic replied carefully, and yes, it has evolved into a personal connection as well. Sometimes the most valuable partnerships begin with challenging each other's assumptions. The announcement created precisely the media buzz Dominic had predicted, but neither he nor Sophia focused on the headlines. The day after the launch, they met at a small coastal restaurant north of the city, away from corporate environments and industry scrutiny. Seated on a terrace overlooking the Pacific, they discussed their future, both professional and personal. Sophia would maintain Ethicode's independence while helping establish Quantum's ethics division. Their personal relationship would develop at its own pace, neither rushed by external expectations nor constrained by professional considerations. I never imagined that challenging you at that summit would lead here, Sophia said, watching sunlight dance across waves. That's the beauty of honest confrontation, Dominic replied. It creates possibility where there was once only certainty. As sunset painted the horizon in brilliant colors, they walked along the shore, their professional titles temporarily set aside. They were simply two people who had found each other through an unlikely beginning, a public challenge that became private respect, intellectual partnership that blossomed into deeper connection. Dominic stopped to pick up a perfectly formed shell, offering it to Sophia. My mother used to say that the most important relationships are those that make us better versions of ourselves. And has this made you better? Sophia asked, accepting the shell. Unquestionably. You reminded me why I started Quantum in the first place, not just to build impressive technology, but to create tools that genuinely improve lives. He smiled. And you've made me a more reflective leader in the process. You've changed me too, Sophia acknowledged. Shown me that ethical principles are most effective when they're practically applied, rather than theoretically perfect. They continued walking as darkness fell and stars appeared above the ocean. Their journey had only just begun, a relationship founded on mutual challenge and respect, intellectual equals who had found in each other not just a worthy adversary, but a perfect complement. What had started with a brave correction had evolved into something neither could have predicted, a partnership that balanced strength with vulnerability, ambition with responsibility, professional excellence with personal connection. In challenging each other, they had discovered the best in themselves, and in that discovery, found a new beginning together.